So there we are again. Hi, everyone. I'm Andreas. With me is Shimi, and we're doing this Shimi and Andreas show for the second time now, second episode. Some people asked us, like, why did we start this? Yeah, the short answer is because our marketing team asked us to do so, right?
I'm happy you're
But
that honest, Andreas.
but the idea is that we share a bit stories from the trenches and our view on things that are happening in our industry, in our world. And actually, we try to always have some kind of insights from our clients and then a news item. But I think this week we can combine all of that into one big topic. And it's, of course, the outages we recently had with Amazon, with Cloudflare. And maybe as a first starter question, like, did any of your customers get affected, Jimmy?
Yes. I
In what
think
sense?
what one customer, I think with the AWS one, no, but with the Cloudflare issue, yes. So one customer was basically down for a while because they were using Cloudflare as their DNS provider, and they didn't have they were on the on a cheaper plan, right? And then another customer, they were using Cloudflare as well, but they had like the enterprise edition, so they got automatically switched over, and there was no real
Really?
downtime. Yeah. So it really
Interesting.
depends on how much you pay for Cloudflare and what you get for it, which kind of makes sense.
Uh-huh. I didn't know because I was on Friday invited to an event from one of the bigger gambling groups, and they were
Something
down
we
for
don't
like,
condone and we don't work on, just
I know
for
we don't work on it, but they
clarification.
invited me. Um, it was interesting, and I was discussing with them, and they basically have been down for like 4 to 5 hours. So they're not on the enterprise plan, I guess, but they're
No.
being cheap. Probably they're even on the free plan. But that's interesting because the first reaction I had when you would encounter these kind of issues is, okay, how can we prevent this from happening in the future? And there, of course, I think it depends on the severity of the outage for your company. Like, in an early stage company, I'd guess, okay, it's annoying that you're down for 4 hours, 5 hours. I think there was a length of the outage with Cloudflare, but I mean, you can cope with it, right? I don't think it makes sense to come up with some kind of strategy to do like a failover or whatever.
I think it depends a bit on the criticality of your business. Like if you're really business critical, then maybe you don't have 4 or 5 hours that you can be down. If you're less business critical, then I think you can get away with it because, in the end, half of the internet was down, so to speak. So,
Exactly.
who are you going to blame?
Yeah. And then with the other customer where we said, okay, they have an enterprise plan, it's fixed there. I mean, I was not aware of that. But that's, of course, that shows that just by talking with Cloudflare, I guess, or with your vendor, you can understand what the delays you get and how they resolve things. But actually, that gambling company, they said the downtime was during the day. It's not our peak hours.
Oh, yeah, voilà. Yeah.
We don't care, and they're making millions, right, a day probably. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. Because I was asking, like, did you then change DNS? I mean, no, we cannot do that. They said because then we would expose our actual IP addresses. So because I was thinking that, yeah, if there is a problem with Cloudflare, just put in some other DNS records to route to your backend system. But that, no, we don't want to do it because exposing that would be way more risky than coping with this downtime for a while, which is very interesting, I believe, and makes a ton of sense in my opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe to comment a bit on that is indeed you need to check criticality and business hours and all of that. And then if you do want to, have some failover talk with Cloudflare first, what they can do. So clearly there is an option where you pay more and you have more, you have zones or failovers, so to speak. And then if you want to take it even further, I think, and it's something we've been thinking about for a specific customer as well, is can we maybe set up a secondary DNS provider with another provider? Can you do it like Google Cloud has it? A lot of other providers have it. I think nowadays you can easily export DNS records, and you can, it's not so tedious, especially if you have a lot of DNS records. You can export it and import it, and then I think you can just set up like a secondary DNS server or name server, whichever one. So that could be another approach, and maybe it's. I haven't done it in practice. I haven't set it up, but maybe it's easier than we think it is to actually have two DNS providers, one on standby and one your main one.
Yeah, it's of course. I mean, especially if you do some kind of infrastructure as code, Terraform kind of thing, I think it should be rather
Mm-hmm.
easy to do something like that. But again, I find it very interesting that it typically comes down to like a business decision, like do we actually care about this? Do we need to spend the time on making this more resilient or not? Because
I hope
it's
I
clear
hope
that the whole internet is like you see all these meme images with like the DNS is like one of the pillars that the whole stack stands on, and it's the case. It is the thing. It's something I always make jokes of. But yeah, this time it was not DNS. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
no, well, it wasn't DNS, but it indeed comes down to a business decision, and in the end, like if Cloudflare is one of your critical service providers, you have the risk register or you have risk management meetings where you discuss these things, and you ask, like, you go to the stakeholder and say, look, this is a risk. If Cloudflare goes down, we're not on the more expensive plan, we're down. Is that a risk you accept, or is that something we should
yeah,
do
absolutely.
something about it? And like then you can do like the cost estimation of that. And then probably the business will say, oh, no, that's too expensive. But then, that is a decision that has been made in the open. And then you're like, okay, it's a risk that we accept. And then you can,
I think
yeah.
it's definitely one of the things that I mean, it's typically like a very common thing to do, like just put Cloudflare in front of it without really thinking about the impact of doing that. And so yeah, it's becoming so standard that people don't realize that it's still a service that needs to run, and if you're not paying for it, yeah,
Yeah. And
um,
especially because it's that critical.
absolutely, yeah. And what actually I want to add one thing to it, and this maybe the news item of the week then is like the highest league of football in Spain. I don't know. Do you know what the name is of the La Liga or something
La
like that?
Primera División.
Yeah, whatever. So apparently there is something with the emission rights. I don't know if you've seen it, but they basically they managed to block Cloudflare during. So basically in Spain, Cloudflare is blocked during the big plays. So basically half the internet in Spain is not working anymore because of a rights discussion. I think it's because people were using Cloudflare VPN probably to watch
Yeah,
the games.
circumvent. Yeah,
It's crazy.
that's interesting. Hey,
Yeah, but there, for example, there was a chief of the league, I guess, that managed to negotiate this with the government or with maybe the cable providers to bring this to practice. But that's also people don't realize the importance of these kind of vendors
mm-hmm.
when they take a decision like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Cool. Thanks for that. Shimi, I think it's we've had our topic. It was one big one, but it was an interesting one. I think one we needed to mention. And of course, we mentioned Cloudflare, but Amazon is also down. We're big Cloudflare lovers as well. So
We've had it with GCP in the past. You've had it
yeah,
with I forgot the name of the French company. So can happen
OVH,
with
yes,
any
yeah, absolutely.
critical company.
Cool. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week, and we see each other again in 2 weeks.
Bye bye.
Yo.